Now move to India, and the Gupta family, notorious in South Africa, are of course Indian nationals. They came to South Africa, they made a fortune, and they have left. Two of them in prison, the brothers in prison in Dubai, awaiting extradition. So that's huge news in South Africa. How big is it in India? I'm joined now by Rebecca Bundan, our correspondent in Mumbai. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. So talk to me about the Gupta family, so notorious here in South Africa. Are they well known in India?
They definitely don't have that same reputation here. They're not as big of a name. However, having said that, this story with the Gupta brothers, two of the Gupta brothers being arrested in the UAE, that has been a story that's been hitting the headlines. It's still been overshadowed by a lot of local stories in India, some stories that are considered bigger here, but it has been in all the major papers, on the major channels as well. It's being very widely covered, as it is internationally, being such a big story. But the average man or woman on the street, you may have to explain to them who the Gupta brothers are. Some people would have heard of them, others would not. They don't have that same kind of fame here. But at the same time, they are from, of course, they hail from India. They're from Saharanpur in North India, in the state of Uttar Pradesh. And if you go to Saharanpur, which I did visit 4 years ago, actually, to cover the story of the Gupta brothers, in fact, everybody there has heard of them. It's quite a sort of an unremarkable city, and there people feel that the Gupta brothers actually did very well for themselves in actually going off to South Africa in the 90s and achieving the success that they did in business, despite all the scandals that obviously came after that. And even following after they fled South Africa in 2018, we do know that the Gupta brothers, particularly including Ajay Gupta, who hasn't been arrested, he was regularly visiting India, including Saharanpur, where the brothers were from. They were from quite humble beginnings, with their father being a small-time trader there. And they would regularly go back. They would meet friends there. They would meet family. Ajay Gupta, I remember, was on a pilgrimage at one point in 2018. They also went to a family wedding, and they were also investing in the area as well, building a huge temple, which became the subject of controversy as well in terms of the source of funds. But the people there locally felt that they were doing a lot for the community, and they were quite happy that they'd kept in touch with the community, that they were going back to their roots as well. So their reputation is certainly different here compared to South Africa.
Talk to me about these allegations that they wanted on tax evasion charges in India. Does this predate their time in South Africa?
So this all stemmed back to 2018, and when all these scandals came to light, when the Gupta brothers fled South Africa, then these issues came into focus in India as well. And there were these investigations which seemed to be ongoing. We haven't actually got confirmation of this, but local media seem to be reporting that the tax investigations that were launched actually in several cities in India regarding properties and funds are actually still ongoing. There are these allegations of potential money laundering for that temple, Hindu temple that's being built in Saharanpur. I remember that was actually put on hold because of these investigations, probably because of COVID-19, the pandemic. That's also put a lot of these kind of investigations, this kind of work on hold, or sort of delayed those processes. But that seems to be something that's still under scrutiny in India. But these are processes that can take many years in India. They can be very slow processes, and there are often these investigations that are launched. They don't actually come to anything in the end. It certainly wasn't something on the scale of what we saw in South Africa, but there were these issues in India as well. But even despite that, the Gupta brothers did keep visiting the country.
Rebecca, to your knowledge, I mean, it does sound like those possible tax evasion investigations are not at a level compared to what we have here in South Africa. But to your knowledge, is there any plan by the Indian government to try and extradite the brothers in Dubai back to India?
They don't seem to have those plans at the moment. From what we can understand, there hasn't been any official comment from India, from the Indian government, in terms of the arrest of the brothers, what their plans are. Also, there's the fact that we do know that the brothers were actually visiting India even when these investigations were going on in the country, and they were even enjoying security that was provided by the government in terms of police security, known as Z-level security in India, when they actually visited here. So they seem to have quite good relations. They seem to be very comfortable in terms of visiting the country, and of course India also doesn't have that extradition agreement with South Africa that the UAE it did ratify that treaty, that agreement, extradition last year, but India doesn't have that. So if they did come back to South Africa, come back to India, they wouldn't necessarily make it back to South Africa. That's another issue, and it seems that the charges they're facing there are on a much larger scale, and India has sort of bigger economic offenders that it's looking at the moment, including Vijay Mallya, the Kingfisher tycoon, Nirav Modi, a diamond billionaire who's now in London. It's working very hard, the Indian government's working hard on bringing people like that back who have committed crimes on a large or are accused of committing crimes on a large scale in India.
All right, well, thank you so much for that update and perspective from India. That was Rebecca Bundan, our correspondent in Mumbai.